Hello there, Commonwealth Realm here. In The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the sky was definitely the limit. On the surface, there were also few boundaries, as we could do pretty much what we wanted in Hyrule's diverse landscapes and even climb all but ancient Sheikah surfaces. Likewise, the exploration on the ground was bound to ancient Sheikah shrines, something that is likely being revised for the sequel, as seen in the reveal trailer. Nevertheless, Breath of the Wild also had a different boundary which annoyed many, including myself, being limited to exploring, swimming, sailing on the surface of the bodies of water found in Hyrule. And no, I'm not talking about the eastern and southern seas, as we covered those in the Seas of Hyrule episode. I'm talking about the one element we haven't gone over extensively before E3 2021, underwater gameplay in Hyrule's fresh waters. So be sure to press that like button, subscribe to our channel, and press that notification bell, and again for all notifications, to help our push to 300,000 subscribers and unlocking our big Switch Pro giveaway, as it's finally time to go underwater inside Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. To get it out of the way before we start, the closest we got to water interaction in the first look trailer was Zelda drinking from this underwater river or lake while exploring the caves with Link on the path to Ganondorf. In other words, not much. So instead of talking about underwater exploration, let's focus on the underwater of the massive bodies of water found in Hyrule's interior. From the map of Breath of the Wild, we can see that around 25 to 30% of the explorable inland territory of Hyrule is water. Sadly, this is also the amount of territory where our gameplay experience went from boundless to bound, as the surface of water allowed us only a limited amount of activities and interaction. Swimming up to or bombing fish to collect them, using magnesis to swoop up metal chests, planks and crates, using cryonis to walk on water, sail, and swim, plus electrocuting water-based enemies while in water, while we stand on land. That's pretty much it, and all because of not implementing any underwater gameplay, as there's no true underwater sections in Breath of the Wild. Much like in The Wind Waker, which stands in great contrast to Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, and even the few areas with underwater exploration in Skyward Sword. No doubt, the lack of the underwater was the greatest boundary in Breath of the Wild, as we face this one more often than the invisible barrier at the four edges, or if you prefer, the borderlands of Hyrule. The greatest unexplored surface of Hyrule, the bottom of its rivers, ponds and lakes, and which even without extending the existing four corners of Hyrule will bring plenty of new areas to explore and dive into. The Zelda team only needed to remove this barrier that felt like an unfinished part of the game. Just think of it, Zora gameplay and sections without underwater activities. The race that has allowed us to swim or breathe underwater in nearly all past 3D Zelda games. Not only that, it was a massive mistake to add stamina when swimming in Breath of the Wild, as it combined with currents and two wide lakes to cross due to stamina discourage us from traversing waters. Well, that and lack of underwater gameplay. Mentally, these obstructions kept us to the land and mountain routes, and this discouragement from water gameplay cannot be repeated in the sequel. In particular, since it makes no sense when you can swim underwater in games like The Witcher 3. Yes, Skyrim didn't have underwater gameplay, but that was in 2011. 10 years ago, and no, there's no shame to admit that this was a shortcoming, much like Guerrilla Games did when revealing that the sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn, Horizon Forbidden West, will have underwater exploration with tools to extend our time underwater so that we can fully immerse into this new area, or if you prefer, dimension of the game. No matter how you turn it, there's no easier way to expand Hyrule than to grant us access to what was there, but also not there in Breath of the Wild. Just imagine all the kinds of treasure, items and other opportunities that the Zelda team could hide in the bottom of rivers, lakes and so on, which we don't just fish up with magnesis, a pool of new content and gameplay which doesn't have to be slow or sluggish. After all, a sequel should learn from the mistakes of the original and look at what it can do better, and nothing, I mean nothing, beats the Zora Link swimming controls found in Majora's Mask. It was speedy, very seamless, and often felt more engaging than running or riding across Termina, with underwater enemies, obstacles, walls, and so on. It was simply fun, and that should also be the mantra in the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Personally, I would love to see a gameplay combination of the Zora mask found in Majora's Mask and the Zora armor in Twilight Princess, as these two games had the best underwater gameplay in the series. By crossing these two together, we'll have the speed and control that we want while exploring underwater. Also with say a combination of some sort of iron boots and breathing without stamina wheels. Also that we can touch the riverbeds, walk and roll on it, and even fight with swords and items like we did in Twilight Princess. When talking about underwater gameplay, we have to remember that the Zelda franchise has had its ups and downs when it comes to this type of gameplay. From sluggish in Ocarina of Time to speedy and fun in Majora's Mask, down to just swimming on the surface for a limited time in the Wind Waker, and then to the most complex moveset in Twilight Princess. And also the twisty, but also efficient stamina system in Skyward Sword. I don't want to mention Skyward Sword much, as even though that system was okay, I simply believe that Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess did underwater gameplay better. Hence, this is what I hope to see confirmed in Breath of the Wild sequel. Underwater swimming that is as controllable as in Twilight Princess, but also with the option of the speed found in Majora's Mask. Despite being criticized by many, I think the changes done in Majora's Mask 3D to the swimming controls and thus gameplay are very close to what is needed in a 3D Zelda title. Why? As it was a compromise that would fit well with the Breath of the Wild gameplay. Next, to turn the underwater and with it river and lake beds into even more immersive environments, you cannot limit underwater gameplay to pure exploration, but also offer some combat possibilities. This in itself could open the path for the return of some typical Zelda underwater enemies or traps, like the piranhas found in Link's Awakening and its remake, Ocarina of Time spikes and shell blades, Twilight Princess bombfish and electric Bari, plus hopefully some new inclusions. And what do underwater enemies have in common? They don't like long-range weapons that are not nerfed by the underwater, specifically the hookshot, which we have been missing for almost 20 years in 3D Zelda games, since the clawshot and dual clawshot doesn't have the same offensive capabilities as the legendary hookshot and longshot found in the first 3D Zelda titles. In addition to that, sword and spear combat, maybe some preserved Sheikah stabbing or harpoon weapons as Ganondoodle's illustrated for Monster Maze, plus green arm functions that would work underwater in combination with some kind of iron boots. But if we are going underwater, then we would love to see the hookshot return to its predatory element. Oh, an implementation of underwater gameplay using Zora tridents like Princess Mipha's light-scale trident or the ceremonial trident. Weapons that are designed to be used for underwater combat and hunting. Now that we have pretty much explored the gameplay possibilities from both an explorative and combat perspective, I would like us to conclude by going over where the Zelda team could add these moments of wonder, excitement and tension. Breath of the Wild Hyrule consists of two primary rivers, with surroundings were often filled with water-based surface enemies. The Eastern Hylia River, which ends up in the very likely deep and filled to the brim with gameplay and content opportunities, Lake Hylia. The other is the Western Regencia River. But I would also like to focus on Zora River and the many lakes surrounding it in Eastern Hyrule, as all deep water rivers and lakes are gameplay opportunities that await to be filled up with content. Combine this with special underwater main quest sections with Prince Sidon and side quests from other Zora who might even follow us down to the dark depths underwater, and you have the recipe of reusing what was already there in Breath of the Wild, but also offering something brand new. And that is in many ways a similar approach that we saw with A Link Between Worlds, where we reused the overworld of A Link to the Past and its heart piece locations, while adding new dimensions through the wall merging mechanic. Speaking of, the rivers and lakes of Hyrule could be ideal locations for hidden heart pieces. So many possibilities, even when reusing the world and not expanding this map, but instead going underground and underwater. The more I think of it, underground and underwater should be the theme of the sequel, as that is where we need to go to locate new secrets and discover gameplay possibilities that were not present in Breath of the Wild. And that settles it for the in-game topics of the sequel before E3 2021. We have, as of this upload date, May 16th, been covering this game for almost 2 years, well over 23 months, all based on one first look trailer and the game that the sequel is building upon. But let's face it, now we are all ready to continue our journey with new trailers, gameplay footage, and eventually the full game itself. Oh, and obviously the final title of the game, since that title will decide what our videos will be titled forward after E3. But unless the game ends up being titled The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, then this video was the last pre-E3 topical video about elements found in Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, as we have covered the provinces, gameplay features, map and control changes, co-op gameplay, and other new possibilities, and so much more, plus now underwater gameplay and combat that could make the sequel better than the 2017 Game of the Year. Our Zelda Breath of the Wild sequel new footage countdown has started, as you will see in the end card, and we want you to join us on our journey by liking this video, subscribing to the Commonwealth Realm with notification bell, and again for all notifications on. Finally, a big thanks goes to all our patreon.com/commonrealm patrons, and in particular to our roller producer Charles Shash. And to all of you watching, please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.